4 months ago, I rode the original Route 66 1926 alignment from Joplin, Missouri to Tucumcari, New Mexico. I'm on my way to ride from Joplin to Chicago, riding the original 1926 alignment, but it becomes more difficult going east, especially in St. Louis, which had 6 different routes, used 5 bridges, and also the state of Illinois, where many changes over the 60 years as an official highway changed different ways that you could drive it. I tried to stay on the 1926 to 1930 alignment. Back to Joplin, I decided to revisit some of the places I'd already seen, plus some new places to stop and look at. I stopped at the 1933 hideout of Bonnie and Clyde, who were surprised by a constable and policeman whom they shot. Left a roll of film which was developed, then the police knew who they were looking for. Back to Galena, Kansas. Evidence of characters from the movie Cars. Another gas station has been remodeled into a gift shop, and it was open today. They've done a great job restoring all these old gas stations, and Doc in the background watching me. This 1923 bridge was open for travel. It's the sole surviving Marsh Arch Bridge on Route 66. This gas station opened in 1930, became the visitor center for Baxter Springs in 2005, recently restored in 2020. I'm standing in one of those spots where 3 states meet: Kansas, Oklahoma, and Missouri. This is Grand Falls, west side of Joplin. It's 163 feet wide and drops 12 feet. Pretty cool seeing this Model T Ford out on the road. On my way through Carthage, I stopped at the Precious Moments Chapel. There is a story behind each of the little faces on the wall and ceiling. Pretty neat little place to visit. Finished in 1974, these 32-foot praying hands on top of a 40-foot mound are the world's largest praying hands memorial. Theater opened in 1949, closed in 1985, and refurbed and reopened in 1998. This is called the Wee Bridge because when you drive over it, you say wee. The Boots Motel opened in 1939, and it's still open to this day. Next door to the motel was the sign welcoming you to Carthage with a hidden 1950s vintage police car with an original Growler siren. Whistler's Hamburgers opened in 1953. I had a great meal plus a great history lesson on Carthage from the lady running the place. The Jasper County Courthouse was destroyed by fire in 1863 during the Battle of Carthage. It wasn't until 1894 that they began to rebuild it and finished it in 1895 for a great cost of only $100,000. Most of these towns had murals painted everywhere in town. This one had a great view of history of the town of Carthage. A new day on the road. This was a service station that opened in 1918. Lowell Davis grew in the actual town of Red Oak, Missouri, which is north of Carthage. He left, and many years later, when he got ready to retire, he found that Red Oak had become a ghost town. So he started buying up the property and moving all of the houses to a farm field, and has basically saved a time capsule of Red Oak and called it Red Oak 2. A lot of old buildings, a lot of relics, a lot of old cars, a very interesting place to visit. Just about every town from here to Springfield, Missouri seemed like they had a mural on the side and a couple of buildings that are over 100 years old, and the town seemed to be dead. Sidney Casey bought this property in 1925 and then went on to build these buildings between 1926 and 1928 and served the public until 1961 when Route 66 bypassed it and he had to shut it down. Spencer's Station has one of the only original untouched 1926 sections of Route 66 at its front door. Just down the street, this through truss bridge was built in 1923. Another bridge still in use is this Triple Pony Bridge built in 1923. This is a major stop on Route 66 in Missouri. The original Sinclair station belonged to Gay and Fred Mason. They opened the gas station in 1930. Gay died in 1953, and the uninsured gas station burned down in 1955. Fred did not rebuild it. Gary Taylor moved to the area in 1979 and bought this piece of land from relatives who owned the property. According to his daughter, her Uncle Steve and her cousin helped build the place back in 2005. No traffic on this stretch, so I got my picture made in the middle of the road of Route 66. Burning daylight, so I just kind of scooted through Springfield, Missouri, stopping at a Steak and Shake that opened in 1967 for lunch. Great neon sign. Rest Haven opened in 1947, and you can still get a room at a very reasonable rate. A model of the Hubble telescope is in front of the Marshfield Courthouse in honor of native son Edwin Hubble. Great advertisement for the Merrimack Caverns, but these barns are slowly disappearing along Route 66. Lebanon, Missouri had a great Route 66 museum attached to their local library. Had a lot of interesting items to see and show you about how life was in the early 20s and 30s and how hard it was to travel along Route 66. Nice model of a diner, also a motel room, and also a gas station. There's only 5 remaining covered bridges in Missouri. This one's located in Lebanon, Missouri, just off of Route 66. The Moss Munger Motel opened in 1946 and has remained open ever since. The Gasconade River Bridge opened in 1922 with a total length of 525 feet and closed in 2014. I was glad I was able to walk on it before they fenced it off. Another great mural as we entered the town of Waynesville. This building was built in 1853 as a stagecoach stop, became a motel, then a hospital during the Civil War, vacant for a long time, now it's a museum. A quirky little place to stop, it's called Uranus, it makes you smile. The fudge is good, but it's definitely a tourist trap. This motel is on a road that dead ends in the ghost town of Arlington. It opened in 1938. The sign was put up in 1952, but finally was closed in 2016. The Mule Trading Post originally opened in 1946 at Gray Summit. When Route 66 was bypassed by I-44, they moved it here in 1957. Another day on the road, checking out the second largest rocking chair in Fanning, Missouri. The town of Cuba has 14 buildings painted with murals, depicting times of history, like when Amelia Earhart landed with engine trouble. At the four-way stop, there's the 1932 Phillips 66 station, was one of the first stations in the area. They also have a jail that was built in 1908. The Wagon Wheel Motel opened in 1935 and is the oldest continuously operated motel on Route 66. After seeing all the advertisements for Merrimack Caverns, you know I had to stop and visit. It's a beautiful cavern, lots of water, lots of changing lights. It's a real entertaining place to visit. In the early years, while people were visiting the caverns, workers would go out to the parking lot and put bumper stickers on all the cars so people would know where you've been. The Sunset Motel opened in 1945 but is closed now. But like a lot of motels along Route 66, the neon signs have been revived and are lit at night even though the motel is still closed. The town of Pacific, Missouri had a great overlook on top of the Sandstone Hill. And while on top of there, I noticed they were having a car show in town, so you know I had to go visit. Nothing like listening to a Hemi run. This is a great visitor center. Right outside is the original bridge of Route 66 that's been stripped of its concrete. Eventually, they're planning on making it into a bike and bicycle path across the Merrimack River. Lots of great neon, lots of great pictures, and history of the town of Times Beach, which is across the bridge, which was contaminated by dioxin back in the 1970s. A lot of pictures of places that no longer exist. This was called the No-Tell Motel. Little children must play. A lot of nice restored cars, plus a lot of one-of-a-kind cars that I've never seen before. They took one of the rooms from the Coral Motel and reassembled it here in this transportation museum. I love the car and also the motorcycle. Today was a good day to be at the Transportation Museum. They were giving rides in trolley number 10, a suburban trolley that was built in 1914. I got to ride it, but I didn't get to ring the bell. The Transportation Museum has over 70 train engines. I didn't have time to look at all of them. Sappington Cemetery is one of the oldest on Route 66, established in 1811. John Sappington was the bodyguard for George Washington at Valley Forge. After the war, they lived in Virginia and a few years in Kentucky. They were friends with Daniel Boone and accompanied Boone to Missouri as soon as the Louisiana Purchase was completed. He brought his family to the St. Louis area in 1805. Found out my cousin's husband is a blood relative. Now that is pretty cool. Had to get a picture of a Clydesdale at Grant's Farm. Das Bevo was built by the Bush family in 1917 as a rest stop between the Anheuser-Busch Brewery and their home at Grant's Farm. The defining feature is the 60-foot tall windmill. I guess they started the stopping for a beer on the way home a long time ago. Ted Drews Sr. started selling frozen custard in St. Louis in 1930. They expanded to this location on Route 66 in 1941. It has become an icon. In 1985, they expanded from 5 serving windows to 12. In 1962, they bought land in Nova Scotia, Canada, and started growing Christmas trees. My cousins say the smell of the fresh-cut Christmas trees is awesome. The custard is awesome, too. Another day to ride. There has been a diner operating on this street corner in St. Louis since 1929. Sad to say that COVID forced its closure in 2020. The arch is a symbol of St. Louis. I remember it being constructed back in 1960s. Never could understand why. But I have visited with myself, my kids, and also my grandkids. Decided to get a little bit of exercise this morning and climb Monk's Mound at the Cahokia Mounds. It's a great climb. Even though it's a little bit off of Route 66 path, I had to go by and see the world's tallest ketchup bottle that was constructed in 1949. It stands 70 feet tall on a 100-foot stand. Chain of Rocks Bridge was built in 1929 as a toll bridge, and it cost a nickel to cross. In 1936, it was designated as Route 66 to bypass downtown St. Louis and increased the toll to a quarter. It was closed in 1970 for repairs and never reopened. It's over a mile long and has a 22-degree bend in the middle of the crossing. In 1998, it received new life as a pedestrian bridge and a bikeway for Route 66. Tried my best to stay on the 1926 original alignment, but detoured some for some Route 66 kitsch things. The Pink Elephant Antique Mall opened in 2005 in the Livingston, Illinois High School gym. It's full of relics from the 1950s and kind of a fun place just to walk through it. Henry's Rabbit Ranch in Staunton, Illinois, celebrates Route 66 and the people along the highway with its emporium of highway and trucking memorabilia. A collection of VW rabbits plus dozens of real rabbits. A group of VW rabbits buried like the Cadillacs in Amarillo, Texas. And also Here It Is pays honor to the Jackrabbit Trading Post in Arizona. The Soulby gas station in Mount Olive, Illinois, opened in 1926, pumped gas till 1991, and closed in 93, now has been repurposed as a museum. The Ariston restaurant originally opened in 1924 in Carlinville, Illinois. When Route 66 was realigned to Litchfield, they moved the restaurant. Had a great lunch. The museum across the street was a bonus. North of Zanesville, Our Lady of the Highway Shrine is located along historic Route 66, watching over travelers along the Mother Road and I-55 since 1959. I backtracked to a concrete bridge and road that was constructed in 1920, 6 years before it would become the original pavement for Route 66. Even after over 100 years, it's still drivable. The county courthouse in Carlinville was constructed between 1867 and 1870, which was not supposed to cost more than $150,000. It came in with a final price tag of $1.4 million. There was a lot of corruption was found, and they finally paid off the debt in 1910. The county jail across the street was completed in 1869 with a unique design feature. Each stone was hollowed out on the ends, surplus cannonballs were placed between the stones. Cell block ceilings, walls, and floors were constructed of 1-inch iron plates with 20 inches of solid stone above and below. This made escape virtually impossible. The Red Brick Highway north of Auburn was part of the original alignment of Route 66. They used the same bricks that were also used at the Indianapolis Speedway in 1909. More 1920s abandoned pavement. One of 5 remaining covered bridges in Missouri, the Sugar Creek Covered Bridge was constructed in 1827. Cozy Dog began in 1946. It moved to the current location in 1996. Lauterbach Man originally was built in 1961. He floated around till 1978, where he landed here permanently. Running out of daylight, this is the only home that Abraham Lincoln ever owned. The Illinois Old State Capitol opened in 1840. The Maid-Rite Diner claims to be the first drive-through. This building was actually built in 1921. The new state capitol opened in 1877. A new day, another gas station standing idle, reminding us years gone by. As I traveled through small-town America, each town had closed gas stations, motels with empty parking lots, buildings empty to remind us of the past. Most of these gas stations are empty shells with dust-covered machines and oil cans. Small-town America is shrinking. Route 66 was lifeblood to many of these communities. I'm enjoying the solitude of the ride, since not many except locals are using historical Route 66 to ride the dead-end sections of the road. This restaurant opened in 1937, became a museum in 91, and then burned to the ground in 2007. This restaurant was famous for its schnitzel, opened in 1929 and closed in 1996. Currently, they are trying to get it ready to be a museum. Abraham Lincoln christened the town of Lincoln with watermelon juice in the year 1853. The phone booth was installed on top of the Lincoln City Hall. Only the youngest unmarried firemen were used as weather spotters. Go figure. This is the world's largest covered wagon, certified by Guinness World Records in 2001. An iconic family business that ran from 1950 to 97. Even though the building is gone, they restored the neon sign in 2018 and shines on historic Route 66. Built in 1903, the J.H. Hawes grain elevator is the only fully restored wood grain elevator in Illinois. It demonstrates the process of grain when it arrives from the field, stored, and shipped. Another quiet little town. This 20-foot tall muffler man stood in front of Bunyan's restaurant in Cicero, Illinois from 66 to 2003 when the Route 66 Association brought him to Atlanta. This theater opened in 1937, remains open, and has some awesome neon lights. Sprague's Super Service Station opened in 1931 as a service station, restaurant, and garage. It had 2 apartments on the second floor for the owner and station attendant. It was restored and opened as a visitor center in 2017. Another dead end. The original alignment had a lot of dangerous curves and sharp turns. That's why they realigned it so many times along its history. A lot of towns have taken advantage of these abandoned roads and made bike paths out of them. Some towns, when they were bypassed by a realignment of Route 66, would put a neon sign out to point back to a town. Genoa Pharmacy opened in 1889, has the original floors and cabinets, and only had 4 owners. The Raymond Schultz Round Barn was built in 1918. Pontiac had 2 great museums. The Route 66 Museum had Bob Waldmeier's school bus, plus his VW that inspired Fillmore from the movie Cars. Also had decades of history from kids' toys, modern appliances, movie stars, and the war years. The Pontiac Museum had everything cars. Another Merrimack barn. This station opened in 1932 and sold fuel till the late 60s. Became a body shop until the 90s, and now it's a visitor center. Ambler's Texaco gas station in Dwight has been identified as the longest operating gas station along Route 66. It dispensed fuel for 66 continuous years until 1999. It opened as a visitor center in the year 2007. It's lunchtime, and I took advantage of the Harley's only parking and had pork chops for lunch. This 2-cell jail was built in 1906 and closed in the late 50s. It's still a good place for tourists to stop and get their picture taken in jail. This 1930s streetcar turned diner has recently been restored in 2007. The Polka Dot Drive-In in Braidwood, Illinois is a retro drive-in diner along Route 66. It opened in 1956, decorated with many outdoor life-size statues of classic movie stars and music legends, and a 9-foot-tall strumming Elvis Presley at the entrance. The Mar Theater in Lockport opened in 1937. Everything is original, including the marquee. The Eagle Hotel is the oldest building in Lockport, built in 1836. In 1965, John Corrick paid $3,500 for a 23-foot tall astronaut, the Gemini Giant, and stood him outside their launching pad drive-in restaurant on Route 66. It remained open until 2017, off and on until 22. After a bidding war, the Gemini Giant was purchased by the Joliet Area Historical Museum for $275,000. They refurbished him and moved him to a park near the river in Wilmington. An almost exact replica of the Blues Brothers battered 74 Dodge Monaco, complete with giant air raid siren on its roof, is mounted on a pole above a parking lot of the Route 66 Food and Fuel, a truck stop just south of Joliet. The Lincoln Highway was the first transcontinental highway across America, spanning 3,400 miles. In 1926, Route 66 crossed its path here in Joliet. The 2 longest highways in the world at that time met in Joliet. The first Dairy Queen specializing in soft serve ice cream opened in this building June of 1940. Dick's Towing has been opened for almost 40 years on historic Route 66. I'm actually standing on an original section of Route 66 bricks. The Rich and Creamy has been on historic Route 66 since 1976. It's getting late and I still have 15 miles to go. had to pass several photo opportunities over the past 2 hours, but my goal is almost in sight. It's 7 p.m. and I've reached the end of Route 66 in Chicago. There is nobody on the street, so I couldn't get anybody there to take my picture. Flipped around the block to the beginning of Route 66, but that's for another trip. Spent the night with my cousins, took the train to town to tour the sights of downtown Chicago. It was a damp, overcast day, so decided to hold off on the Willis Tower till the afternoon. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. Where is everybody? Calder's Flamingo was installed in 1974. It's 53 feet tall. Doesn't look like a flamingo to me, but it's art. Had to revisit the end of Route 66. Officially titled Cloudgate, everyone calls it the Beam, was unveiled in 2004. It's manufactured from 168 massive stainless steel plates welded to a truss framework and polished. 33 feet high, 42 feet wide, and 66 feet long. It gets a thorough polish every morning, and the bottom 6 feet is wiped down twice a day, a deep clean twice a year. It's kind of like washing an airplane. The 3,800-seat Chicago Theater opened in 1921. The entire marquee was replaced in 1994, but retains the look of its predecessor. It has no title. They call it the Chicago Picasso, or just the Picasso. Looks like a lion to me. It's still art. Took the train to the Science and Industry Museum. They had a cross-section of a support cable from the Bay Bridge in San Francisco. Highlight of the museum is this captured U-boat, a German submarine U-505, and how it was captured and kept secret. It's a riveting wartime story, and it was awesome. The story on how this U-boat ended up in the Chicago Museum is also interesting. This was my chance to be a big kid, act like I'm driving a combine through the cornfields. A lot of planes hung from the ceiling, including a Boeing 727 that you could walk through. As a kid, I remember the trains, and I loved them and wished I could drive them. The cloud vortex generator was fun because you could actually change the speed and the direction of the cloud and watch it, how it changes with the airspeed. It was huge and 3 stories tall. The 20-foot Tesla coil in the ceiling generates 1.5 million watts of electrical discharge and scares the bejeebers out of people that didn't know it was getting ready to discharge. Some things you just have to touch. So much to see and do, but I still wanted to go up in the Willis building, so it's time to go back to downtown. The Buckingham Memorial Fountain was opened in 1927. It has 3 pumps, 133 jets. The main jet will shoot water 150 feet in the air, and it's 280 feet across. Looking north on Lake Michigan towards the Navy Pier. It's 1:45 and time for a late lunch of a Chicago hot dog. Originally known as the Sears Tower, but when you have money, you can call it anything. So it's now the Willis Tower. The battle on whose building is tallest because who has the tallest antenna or spiral doesn't make any difference to me. I just know I'm going to the 103rd floor and standing out on the sky deck.
970 feet of the Yokohama Landmark Tower, Japan's tallest building. 1,062 feet in Paris's stunning Eiffel Tower. The Bank of Chinatown in Hong Kong. 1,250 feet in the Empire State Building in New York. And now we're here, 103 stories up. Welcome to the top.
The clouds had lifted, so I had a great view from the top. For fun, you can stand on Ferris Bueller's footprints from the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Fun part for me was getting out on the sky deck, which is a 4-foot ledge made out of plexiglass that you can stand and look straight down to the ground. Tough to do a selfie when you're laying flat on your back. It's fun. Not for people who don't like heights, though. There's 4 of them, so you can look at other gerbils that are standing in the cage. Had a great time, but sad to say, it's time to head for home. Today I'm riding back to St. Louis, and I thought I'd catch a few places that I missed on the way up. I really wanted to stop at this historic 66 restaurant, but they hadn't started serving lunch yet. I was sad. I did make it to the Route 66 Museum in Joliet, and I enjoyed catching these guys just resting. One of the places I wanted to tour was the Joliet Correctional Center, a prison that was built in 1858 and closed in 2002. Its claim to fame was this is the backdrop for Jake Blues being released from prison in 1980 movie Blues Brothers. Since I had a one-on-one tour guide, he took me to death row and allowed me to look in one of the rooms. He says, don't go in there and lock yourself in because we've lost the keys. This was a very large facility. It had a capacity for 1,800 prisoners and normally had over 1,500 to 1,600 at any time. Even though it is closed, they do tours and special events like that Friday they were setting up for the Blues Brothers movie. Stopped to take a picture of this mural, and a local policeman stopped and saw me with my motorcycle and said, hey, I'll take your picture with your motorcycle. And he did. Made it to my cousin's house in St. Louis and felt we needed another trip to Ted Drew's Frozen Custard. Always good to see the state line in Arkansas. A little known fact is the Beatles back in September of 1964 actually landed at a small airport in Walnut Ridge, Arkansas. I stopped in town just to see some of the Beatlemania stuff they've put up around town. Of course, I needed a picture with the Beatles in their Abbey Road silhouettes. Like any trip, you always got to come home and clean up stuff. After cleaning up the bike, of course, my brain started thinking of the next trip. Sandy beaches and, of course, Santa Monica Pier.